Hello, and welcome to Real Talk with Rachel. Today I'm considering what it means to grow up with a high ACE, or Adverse Childhood Experiences, score. There's a scale called the Adverse Childhood Experiences, or ACE, scale. It basically tallies up the types of childhood trauma, neglect, abuse, and other adverse childhood experiences we had when we were younger. In general, a higher ACE score indicates higher trauma and the possibility for more health problems later in life. I have a high ACE score. Sometimes I wonder if this high ACE score and the reality of my childhood has damaged my brain. Like, maybe I'm not as creative as I could be if I didn't have a high ACE score. Or maybe I could write better stories. Maybe I wouldn't deal with anxiety and depression and OCD. Maybe I wouldn't have light and sound sensitivity or struggle with frequent sensory overload. Maybe I could be a better friend or a better partner or a better everything. And then I start wondering if I will ever be the great I want to be. I start to wonder if my childhood, the way I grew up, really did break something in me that I will never get back. Psychology research shows that the negative health effects of a high ACE score can also negatively impact job retention and educational opportunities. A high ACE score can cause toxic stress, which is extended or prolonged stress. All of that can affect a child's brain. It makes changes to it. It affects attention, decision-making, and it impacts learning. High ACE scores lead to adults who struggle with depression and anxiety and other mental illnesses. MRIs show that the higher a person's ACE score is, the less gray matter they have, including in the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain that makes decisions and self-regulates. There's also less gray matter in the amygdala, which is the fear processing center of the brain. High ACE scores also shrink the hippocampus, which is the part of the brain responsible for processing emotions and memory, and managing stress. Repeated adverse experiences can cause neurochemicals that lead to neuroinflammation, which means the children who live through those repeated adverse experiences are more likely to develop mood disorders or have poor executive functioning and decision-making skills. Scientists at Duke University, the University of California at San Francisco, and Brown University discovered that high ACE scores also prematurely age children on a cellular level. Early trauma wreaks havoc on the brain's default mode network, which is the part of the brain that tells us what's relevant and not relevant, so we can be ready for the next thing we have to do. Children with chronic childhood adversity may have trouble reacting appropriately to the world around them. Research also shows they have weaker neural connections between the prefrontal cortex and the hippocampus. And girls also showed weaker connections between the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala. Here's why that's important. The prefrontal amygdala relationship determines how emotionally reactive we'll be to what happens to us in our everyday lives. Essentially, it regulates whether we perceive those things as stressful and dangerous. This is why girls with chronic childhood adversity are more likely to develop anxiety and depression. It's not fair, is it? That's what I start thinking. It's not fair that I had to go through that, and now I have this brain that freaks out every time there's a financial hiccup and has such trouble answering the question, do you want to do this or not? And relies so much on habits because habits mean I don't have to make decisions. A brain that circles round and round and round the drain of, I will never be the great I want to be because of this. I get into these funks where I question whether I would be a better everything if I hadn't had these experiences. Are my stories too emotional? Am I too emotional? Maybe I would write lighter, happier stories if I hadn't had these experiences. Maybe I'd put myself out there more because I wouldn't constantly be concerned with how I was coming across. Sometimes I feel like I've been cheated. Do I only have 3/4 of the brain I could have? The Center on the Developing Child at Harvard University says the ACE score doesn't tell the whole story, not just because it doesn't consider outside environmental traumas, but also because ACEs affect everyone differently. And those later social, emotional, and/or health problems are not inevitable. A stable adult in the picture can help, and I had a few of those. My mom, my teachers. Some children also have more resilience, which is the ability to overcome serious hardships. I kind of just plowed through and never quit. Maybe that's resilience. So when I get into these funks, worrying that something is wrong with my brain or that I'm missing something essential, I remind myself that all I can really do is be the best everything I can be and give my kids a better childhood experience than I had. Once I expressed these feelings to a writer friend, and she said, "Yeah, but if you hadn't experienced these things, you wouldn't be able to write the stories you write." And I thought, yeah, but maybe they're not the right stories. And she reminded me that there are kids who are living those things right now, and they need stories to tell them they can survive and thrive. And she is absolutely right. That doesn't make me grateful for those experiences, but it does make me glad I might be able to help the kids going through them. Maybe my brain has been altered, but I like to think that it's not stunted, it's just uniquely me. And if one child can gain hope and strength and love and worthiness from my stories, then I will keep telling them, however difficult they are. Thanks for listening to my Real Talk. Be sure to subscribe to my channel for videos about books and writing and more videos like this. See you next time.